Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm counting down my top 10 favorite Metallica songs. Metallica is one of my favorite bands of all time, and also one of the bands that are responsible for helping get me into heavy metal music in general. And of course, I don't think I'd be here doing videos about music, top 10s, album reviews, things like that, without this band, coming into my life and showing me a whole new, different world of music. So, today counting down my top 10 Metallica songs was not an easy task to do, just narrowing it down to 10, of course. While Metallica certainly haven't had their best years and, just had some average albums as well, they do have a great discography of material that was difficult to narrow down to just 10. So if your favorite song by Metallica doesn't appear on this list, it doesn't mean I necessarily don't like the song, it just means that it didn't make this list in particular. And, there are many other Metallica songs I like besides these 10, because, let's be honest, if I only like 10 Metallica songs, chances are I wouldn't bother doing a top 10 list for them. In fact, if you actually want to hear my thoughts further on Metallica, I actually reviewed all their albums here on my channel, and there's a playlist that's going to be linked in the description as well as here on screen at the end of the video that you can click on. It'll take you to that playlist where you can watch all those Metallica reviews if you want to hear my thoughts on some of the other songs and just material in more detail than what I'm talking about here. But, without any more delay, let's get right into this list, which is, by the way, once again, all my opinion, so, you feel free to have your own. Let's get started. Starting off at number 10, I have a fan favorite. It is One from their album Injustice for All. And it might anger some people that this track is only this low on the list and that it's not higher. But, I do really like this song. It just happens that I like 9 tracks more than this one. One is overall just a really enjoyable song for the most part. I can definitely understand why many people enjoy this track. It starts off a bit slower, kind of building up until you get these angry choruses and a really awesome guitar solo at the end of this song with just an awesome sort of breakdown part preceding it. The lyrics here tell the story of a soldier who's pretty much just left without any ability to connect with the actual world. No limbs, no feeling, pretty much. They're just existing for the most part. And it just tells the story of this tortured soul of what was a soldier throughout the lyrics here. And it's very interesting lyrics as well that kind of, help, portray what this message is trying to get at, that war is ultimately bad. And, the instrumental here is also just really awesome. Like I mentioned before, the guitar solo is great, and even the fact that the bass isn't super audible here on this track, like it is on most of Injustice for All, doesn't even hold this track back enough to not make it into my top 10. Coming in at my number 9 spot, I have Spit Out the Bone from Metallica's new studio album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. This was the closing track from that album. It was a double album. It was technically the closing song on the second disc, but it's just ultimately a really awesome song. It's definitely a really thrashy song, something I wasn't sure I was going to get from Metallica on their newest album. And for the most part, it was a really thrashy effort, and this song in particular just stands out as being something that I feel like could have fit into Metallica's older albums if they'd only had a bit worse of a production, and just, it maintains that anger and aggression that was present in earlier Metallica, but kind of updates it to a newer sound, and that's what I really enjoy about this track. Especially its placement at the end of the album kind of serves as a really epic, kind of angry, awesome closing to this album that Metallica had. Especially the second disc, which I felt like wasn't super interesting on Hardwired to Self-Destruct. This made it all worthwhile getting to this track. Coming in at my number 8 spot, I have No Remorse from their first album, Kill 'Em All. Now this song really stands out to me for one reason. The fact that the riff, it sounds like the opening song from Doom. Yep, that's why I really like this song. Now, to be fair, the Doom track honestly kind of took inspiration from this song and, to make that song for that game, considering the game came out later. But still, the connection is just really strong in my opinion. I do love me some Doom, and this song always reminds me of that game, which is always a good thing. The riff that is kind of imitated from in that game is just really awesome here on this track. I do like the just sheer aggression that's present here on this track. It's really enjoyable, and it's definitely my favorite song on Kill 'Em All. Now coming in at my number 7 spot, I have The God That Failed from their Black album. Now this track is really interesting because lyrically it deals with James Hetfield and, kind of confronting the whole situation concerning his mother. I believe it was his mother's death as a result of not seeking out medicine due to her religion, hence the title of the track, The God That Failed. And it's just a really kind of angry track, and not in the way that it's, you know, super in your face with super, like, a ton of aggression, like a track like maybe Spit Out the Bone or even No Remorse per se. But this track, even though it is maybe not super in your face and super, like, aggressive on the surface, the anger on this track is definitely really real, and just you can just kind of tell with the way that he sings and delivers the lyrics here on this track that the anger that he feels is very real, and it's coming from a very real place in his life, that being, you know, the story I just said before concerning I believe it was his mother and her death. It definitely just makes the track really stand out and have a really good meaning to it. And I just really like the sound of the track as well. It kind of has this very menacing feel to it, which, like I said before, isn't super aggressive in the way that maybe a track like Spit Out the Bone is, but it still kind of has this menacing sort of like creeping feel to it that, you know, when it hits you, you just know that this track, you know, they're not joking around here. Now coming in at my number 6 spot, I have Orion from their album Master of Puppets. Now Orion stands out for being an instrumental track, and while Metallica have certainly made a fair share of those throughout their albums, this one stands out to me as being the best easily. Mostly because just the amount of stuff that we get to see happen here on this track. Despite the fact that it's an instrumental, it's not exactly just like a filler track or, you know, a filler instrumental or something that an artist just put on an album just, you know, to take up time. This song is one of the best songs on Master of Puppets. And I really like to see Cliff Burton and, you know, his bass playing skills here on this track. He gets to show off a lot of awesome stuff here. And it's definitely understandable why people were so upset about his death following it, especially getting to see some of the talent he was able to portray on albums like Master of Puppets, for example. Particularly here on this track. This is kind of like almost Cliff's song in a way, because you just get to hear so much of his ability here on this one song. This song goes through many phases, speeding up, slowing down, changing just the overall feel of the song itself. And while even though the song has no lyrics to it, you can still get emotion through the actual instrumental aspect of this track. You can still feel it, which is interesting because, you know, without lyrics, which are typically the most easy way to get across a message in your song or like a feeling in the message of a song. Take, for example, artists, you know, if they want to address something sad, you know, they'll sing sad lyrics, or if they're happy, they'll sing happy lyrics. But without that, you know, there to help you, you have to rely solely on the instrumental's ability to get across a certain sound and a certain message. And here on this track, I feel like it manages to get across that very well. And it just, you know, overall is one of the most interesting tracks on Master of Puppets and Metallica's discography as a whole, because while it is an instrumental, which Metallica do have other tracks like, it manages to stand out as being, in my opinion at least, the most interesting and the most diverse instrumental that they've ever put out. Coming in at my number 5 spot, maybe a bit of an unconventional pick, but it's The House Jack Built from Metallica's album Load. Now this track instantly kind of stood out to me when listening through Load, just for, you know, kind of being one of the more interesting ballad type tracks that Metallica had put out. And especially during the Black Album and Load and Reload, that era of the band, Metallica, they had a good handful of ballad type tracks that they had put out. But this one kind of stands out to me for not only its lyrical message, but just a lot of the stuff that goes on in terms of the actual instrumentation here on this track. Lyrically, this track seems to deal with addiction and just kind of getting over that aspect. Of course, the members of Metallica did deal with their own addictions throughout, you know, the band's career, and that's kind of what's kind of shown here in the lyrics of this track. Instrumentally, it is a bit of a slower song. However, it's not a boring slow song because there is a lot that goes on. We have kind of a really sort of epic feeling chorus that comes in, where James Hetfield, you know, just the way he delivers the lyrics feels so realistic and like it's coming from their perspective, like his perspective even. It's just a very personal sort of sounding song to him. The guitar solo on this track, I also like how they use a talk box, which, you know, is something that typically I don't think would work for Metallica, especially with their thrashier sound. But with this slower pace, it manages to work very well with the guitar solo and make it kind of stand out as being an interesting guitar solo in the wide array of guitar solos Metallica have put into their songs over the years. I do like the track how it is, even though it does have a slower feel to it, it still has a bit of an intensity to it as well. It does have a bit of a bite to it. The lyrics definitely do have a lot of meaning to them, and the guitar solo is really stand out in my opinion. And overall, all these facts put together makes one of the most interesting, slower ballad-type tracks that Metallica have ever put out in my opinion. But then again, that is just my own personal opinion. I also think it is a rather underrated track because I don't really hear people talk about it all that much. Overall, I do think it is the standout on Load, however. Now, on my number 4 spot, I have Fade to Black from Ride the Lightning. Another ballad-type track, and arguably one of the most interesting Metallica have put out as well. and also one of the first coming only on their second album, Ride the Lightning. After Kill 'Em All, which was for the most part just straightforward aggression, really, and that is the same for most of Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets as well, but Ride the Lightning also saw Metallica begin to experiment more with some different aspects and different sounds, and Fade to Black is just a prime example of that. Much of the beginning here begins with an acoustic guitar part, which is, definitely different than the thrashy, aggressive sound that's shown throughout much of Ride the Lightning and even their earlier works like Kill 'Em All. And of course, the sad delivery of the lyrics here by James Hetfield works well. Of course, the lyrics are dealing with suicide, not exactly a light subject matter, but he manages to get it across in a very realistic manner, containing both the sadness and the anger that's present in, that aspect. It comes from the perspective of someone at this point in their life who's just so sad and so angry, and he captures that perfectly in the way that he delivers the lyrics. He has sad singing as well as some angrier growls that come here on the track as well. And then every so often the track will kick into the heavier sections with the electric guitars, and it just captures that anger aspect of what this person may be feeling perfectly. And at the end of the track, the electric guitars pretty much completely take over, and you have a really awesome guitar solo that closes the track out. It's ultimately, I think, the best Metallica ballad song, just surpassing the House Jack Built by a bit, because there is a lot more going on here, as well as it being the first song out of many that Metallica would do. Definitely sort of a groundbreaking song for Metallica, at least in terms of doing a more ballad type track with more personal lyrics, not just straightforward aggression type songs that were present throughout Kill 'Em All, for example. It sees Metallica experimenting more and just kind of expanding their boundaries in a way that would be followed up on a lot more in later albums. And, just from the beautiful acoustic guitars here to the more aggressive and just harsh electric guitars, the James Hetfield sort of changing vocals, either from soft singing with the acoustic guitars to more aggressive, in-your-face singing during the more electric guitar type parts. It all works together so well here on this one track, and there's a reason why this track is as liked as it is. Now coming in at my number 3 spot, we have Master of Puppets, of course, from the album of the same name. Of course, this is another fan favorite, and with good reason. Master of Puppets just sees so much going on here on this one track. It's more of a thrashy-leaning Metallica song for the most part. However, it does manage to mix in some more melodic moments later on during guitar solos and things of that sort, which I think is very interesting. It shows a lot of the aspects that make Metallica great here all on this one track, and that's really kind of what I view this track as. Kind of if I wanted to show someone what Metallica is all about, at least in their 80s years, I think Master of Puppets may be the best example, because it showcases the angrier aggression, the thrashy riffs, but it could also show that softer side in the more melodic sections that was present on other tracks like Fade to Black that I was talking about earlier, or One that I was talking about earlier, for example. The softer, more melodic moments don't exactly take over the track, but that, once again, is more representative of Metallica's entire career throughout the 80s in general, with those softer moments and softer tracks being present occasionally, but never exactly taking over their sound or the albums that they were on. And that's really just what makes Master of Puppets a great song. It has great soloing, the riffs are fantastic, the lyrics that deal with addiction again are also very, awesome and sort of classic at this point. It's just overall a really solid song all the way through. It's the most well-rounded song I think that Metallica have put out for the most part, and that's the reason why it is here on this list. Alright folks, now coming in at my second place spot, I have Dyer's Eve from Injustice for All. And once again, this track is a bit like The God That Failed that I mentioned earlier, in the regard that the anger on this track just feels very real. Even though this track definitely does have a bit more of an aggressive, in-your-face feel that is different than The God That Failed, which, like I said in that track, that it wasn't quite in your face in terms of the anger, it was more in the lyrics and the delivery. But here, everything in this track just comes together in terms of the anger here. The lyrics here deal with James Hetfield growing up, just kind of being, I guess you could say, locked off from the world as a result of, I guess his parents and whatever he was growing up with. And the anger is just really, as I said before, real here on this track. The way he delivers the lyrics, you could just tell that, he's telling the truth here. It's not just some fabricated story to just, be edgy and be angry. It's definitely really real here. The guitars here just sound very aggressive as well, and they match nicely. The drumming here is just insane. I know people, when it comes to Lars Ulrich and his drumming, lots of times like to say, yeah, he's not a great drummer, and in recent years, you could make that argument, I guess. But back in these days, back in the Injustice for All days, that's not the case. He's a great drummer here, and he shows it here on this track. The guitar parts that come at the end of this track, the soloing, is just, once again, phenomenal, and captures the anger just of the track perfectly. And that's why I love this track so much. The anger is just so there, and it's just so realistic. The lyrics are just, encapsulate it perfectly. And it's just a really, even in a way, an underrated track, because I don't hear it talked about nearly as much as some other tracks from the same album, like One, for example, which, while it did make my list and I do really like it, Dyer's Eve just easily is, significantly better, in my opinion. Just, this song, pure aggression, in my opinion. That's what I have to describe this song as. Aggression, anger, just, it's all there. And finally, coming at number 1, maybe it's a bit of a predictable choice because I mentioned it in my review for Ride the Lightning, but it's Creeping Death. And also my shirt is Creeping Death, Metallica shirt. It says Creeping Death on the bottom, trust me, I just don't want to stand up right now. But Creeping Death, I love this song. Kind of like Master of Puppets, I feel like it's a really well-rounded song in terms of what it does. It's just a really sort of thrashy song that captures like the thrashy aspect of Metallica perfectly, in my opinion. The lyrics here kind of deal with the plagues of Egypt and that whole part of the Bible. And maybe doing Bible-like related songs for your metal album is a bit cliche nowadays and overdone. Especially like the plagues of Egypt and Revelation and all that overdone stuff. But on this track it works really well in my opinion. And kind of embodying the plagues as like death itself and like kind of creeping death, it's just a really cool way to kind of like embody the diseases themselves as like an actual like person, that in this case being death itself. And the lyrics managed to tell that story in a really interesting way while keeping that aggression. The riffs here are super awesome, and then the breakdown later on in the track is once again captures the anger and just awesomeness of the track, along with a super cool guitar solo. The outro of the track also is really cool as well. I love the guitar parts that they managed to do there as well. And overall, I just think it's a really solid song all the way through. I love the riff, I love the vocals, the bass, the drums. Everything is just, perfect here on this track. It's, a track that I love coming back to time and time again, which is kind of funny considering when I first heard the song, it didn't really stand out to me all that much. It took a while for it to grow on me. But when it did, my goodness, did it grow on me a lot. As you can tell, because it's number 1 on my top 10 Metallica songs list. It's my favorite Metallica song ever. And, it's just overall a fantastic song. If you haven't checked it out, along with Metallica's Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets, pretty much any of their albums from the 80s, you need to do them right now. Like, right as soon as you're done watching this video. Like, go listen to these albums. But yeah, folks, that's my list, and, it is just my list in my opinion only. I could definitely understand if you have a completely different opinion. In fact, I greatly appreciate seeing that opinion, so make sure you leave it down in the comment section below so I can actually see that. And, there's no reason to get angry over a difference in, like, opinion here, because really, that's all it is, just an opinion. So make sure that, you guys subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video so, you could make sure you see other top 10 lists when they come out, more album reviews. Make sure you check out those Metallica reviews I already did. Like I said, the playlist is linked in the description, and it should be on screen here when the video finishes. Follow me on all the social medias linked in the description. Thanks a lot, guys, and stay golden.